Make sure to mute yourselves as you're coming in, but we want to thank you all for joining us. All righty. Well, thank you all for joining us. My name is Isabel Dela Cruz. I'm the project manager here at Valley Vision. Today, you're joining us hopefully for the Energy Construction and Utilities Regional Industry Advisory meeting. And today's focus will be on building electrification and energy efficiency related occupations. Just a little housekeeping. We encourage everyone to enable their video camera. It's optional though. And please stay on mute unless you are called on to ask a question. The chat is open and we encourage all of you to network, get to know one another in the chat, and also submit your questions there for commentary just in that side button. And this meeting will be recorded and will be provided as a part of post-meeting materials alongside with the PowerPoint and a report. All right, and that will lead me to Renee John.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you are here for a regional industry advisory on energy construction and utilities. And we have a specific focus today on building electrification and related occupations. We're hoping to kind of pull back the curtain on some of the changes that are happening to construction occupations and also what are the expected implications of building electrification on this sector. I want to thank the supporters that bring these advisories to you, and they are primarily funded by the community colleges through Strong Workforce Program funds. Particularly in our region, it's the North Region community colleges, which include Los Rios Community College District, Sierra College, we have Lake Tahoe College, and also Woodland and Yuba College. And in addition to that, we have some funding that's provided by the workforce boards in the capital region, which includes Greater Sacramento Works, Golden Sierra Job Training, North Central Counties Consortium, and YOLA Works. All of these partners together bring these advisories to you in order to kind of regionalize the employer and industry advisory process to make sure that we're all receiving good up-to-date information, and also we're not overtaxing our employer and industry partners with having to sit on multiple advisory panels to provide the same information to those of us who need to inform our programs and training delivery. So next slide, please. Our agenda today, we have a welcome and introduction for you, and then you're going to be hearing about legislative drivers that are affecting building electrification, both at the state level and then at the local level, looking at specifically what the city of Sacramento is doing. We'll have a labor market and trend analysis by the Centers of Excellence. We'll have our industry panel discussion and then some community college spotlights, and we'll wrap up with a conclusion. Next slide, please. So to start off, I want to introduce you to Shinder Gill. Dr. Gill is new to the community college system. She is the new Assistant Director of Employer Partnerships, and her role is specifically to connect industry and employer partners with the training and education that's occurring in the community college system in the North region in these sectors. And I will have Dr. Gill give a brief introduction or hello.
Thank you, Renee. That was a great introduction and summation of my role working with the community colleges and also partnering with the employers as well in the industry of energy construction and utilities. I am looking forward to meeting with everybody, and I've been on board for about a month and I'm enjoying what I've been learning at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Valley Vision's own Angelina Alwini. She has put together a brief slide deck on state legislative drivers that are affecting building electrification. So Angelina, if you could share with us what you learned.
Thank you very much, Renee, and great to see all of you. I'm going to be talking about the codes and proposals that have been set forth to help improve energy efficiency in residential, non-residential, and existing buildings. Next slide, please. So a couple of weeks ago, Governor Newsom set a goal of 3 million climate-ready homes by 2030, while also directing that 50% of these investments go to low-income and disadvantaged communities. And he also advocated for the installation of 6 million electric-efficient heat pumps by 2030. Next slide, please. Aside from this, the California Energy Commission over the years has played a key role in implementing and crafting policies and programs to create a low carbon economy. One of the ways they do this is through the Building Energy Efficiency Standards Code, also known as the Energy Code, which develops standards and programs for newly constructed and existing buildings to improve their energy efficiency. The Energy Code is updated every 3 years, and most recently, the 2022 Energy Code was adopted on August 11, 2021. Next slide, please. So the Energy Code for 2022 advocates for efficient electric heat pumps, establishes electric-ready requirements for new homes, and expands solar, photovoltaic, and battery storage standards, as well as strengthen ventilation standards to improve air quality. Next slide, please. So the Building Energy Efficiency Standards Code is found under Title 24. And Title 24 is the California Building Standard Code with this broad set of requirements for energy conservation, green design, construction, and maintenance of buildings. The one that I talked about, Title 24, Part 6, the Energy Code, regulates building and energy efficiency requirements for residential and non-residential buildings, including newly constructed buildings. And then Title 24, Part 11, the CAL Green, also formerly known as the California Green Building Standards Code, is a state-mandated green building code which promotes design and construction of buildings that have a positive environmental impact and enhances sustainable construction practices. Other notable parts of Title 24 include Title 2, Part 2.5 to Part 5, which contains additional regulations related to energy efficiency standards for residential and non-residential buildings. So it covers the general building design and construction standards, mechanical design, plumbing standards, as well as electrical standards. And it's the goal here is to improve the energy efficiency of buildings. Next slide, please. The California Public Utilities Commission also plays a key role in energy efficiency standards and regulates utilities and services, including electrical energy and natural gas. One of the proposals put forth by the CPUC was to phase out the energy efficiency natural gas incentives over the next 10 years. The reason behind this was because it was determined that the energy efficiency gas incentives were not cost effective and were not aligned with California's climate action goals. Another staff proposal that was put forward was to eliminate gas line extension allowances, 10-year refundable payment options, and the 50% discount option plan under the current gas extension allowances. And it also has demand flexibility and electric rates, which had the objective to enhance the reliability of California's electric system, make electric bills more affordable and equitable, and enable the widespread electrification of buildings and transportation, and also reduce the long-term system cost effects through it, and reduce the long-term system cost efficiency of electric bills. And this brief overview highlights the fact that there's traction when it comes to ensuring that energy buildings, existing buildings, new constructed buildings both residential and non-residential buildings are meeting energy efficiency standards that ensure that California meets its climate goals by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And the reference materials for this presentation will be provided following the conclusion of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. Appreciate the work you did for that and the planning team that informed these legislative drivers. Next, I want to introduce Laura Toller, who is an associate planner with the City of Sacramento, and she focuses on climate and sustainability related projects. She's currently working on the existing building electrification strategy and the on-site water reuse and dual plumbing study. She holds a Master's of Science in Community Development from UC Davis. And Laura, we will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Renee. Can everyone hear me okay? I was having some audio. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, you can go to the next slide. And maybe the next one too. But yeah, great. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we are focusing on electrification in the city of Sacramento. I know this is a regional advisory, so this is just the work that the city is doing right now, though we expect that the region more broadly will take on some of this as well. So electrification is a focus for the city of Sacramento as a way to meet our climate goals, which includes carbon neutrality by 2045. We have multiple efforts related to electrification, including the new building electrification ordinance, which is detailed to the left, which will require all electric new construction for low-rise buildings 3 stories or less beginning on January 1st, 2023, and for all buildings beginning in 2026, with some limited exemptions. In addition, at the direction of City Council, the city is working on developing an existing building electrification strategy, which is detailed at the right, to ensure an equitable transition to all electric existing buildings. This strategy will consist of a set of long-term policies to transition existing buildings to electric over time. And you can go to the next slide. So there are many reasons the city is working on building electrification. We are in the process of updating our climate action and adaptation plan with the goal of 0 greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. Part of reaching that goal will be reducing and eventually eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from buildings. In the short term, or in addition, electrification can also improve community health by removing air polluting gas appliances from buildings. Energy affordability is another benefit. There's expected long-term cost savings. Gas rates are predicted to go up really dramatically over the next several decades. Electrification also makes buildings more resilient and safe by removing gas infrastructure that can cause fires and other dangers. And it presents opportunities to make improvements in buildings in historically underinvested communities and improve equity in Sacramento. You can go to the next slide. So this slide shows some of the expected workforce demands related to building electrification. Existing building electrification will require appliance replacements, so replacing gas appliances with electric. In some cases, this will necessitate wiring and panel upgrades. And we also anticipate pairing building electrification retrofits with other housing condition improvements, such as improving the building envelope, which could include replacing windows, adding insulation. It could also include solar installation. And then in the sort of universe of electrification policies, there may be energy audits and jobs related to that, building performance standards, and other retrofits. So, which is going to lead to demand for electricians, HVAC technicians, and then general construction labor as well. Go to the next slide. So this slide just gives you a sense of scale. So in Sacramento, we have a total of about 200,000 housing units. And this is broken down by different building types. Just as a point of reference, in Sacramento County, there are about 600,000 total housing units. So as the county electrifies as well, there will be even broader workforce impacts. Go to the next slide. So in Sacramento, we have, so in addition to housing units, we have almost 5,000 commercial buildings and 4,000 industrial and other buildings. So this gives you a sense of a sort of breakdown of building types. And there are, different opportunities and challenges for electrifying these different building types. And part of the existing building electrification strategy will be figuring out how to transition all of these buildings to all electric by 2045. Go to the next slide. So we know sort of what it will take to retrofit buildings to be all electric. We're going to replace all gas-powered appliances with electric alternatives. The how we get there is still being decided. And this slide shows anticipated workforce impacts of various policy pathways. So one policy option, and again, we haven't decided for the city how exactly we're going to do this. We're working on that right now. But one policy option would be a time of replacement policy, which would mean that when an appliance breaks, owners need to replace it with an electric alternative. This provides a lot of flexibility. There's some upfront costs, but people would have long-term savings. And this type of policy would likely result in sort of the least predictable job demand, since appliances would need replacement at different times in different buildings. Another option would be an end of flow policy. Some other cities have adopted this or are working on it, in which a jurisdiction would set a date after which there would be no gas service. So homeowners would still hire their own contractors, but they'd have longer time to prepare. And this would increase the predictability of job demand. And then finally, a direct installation policy. There would be a lead agency that hires contractors. So that would result in less private control, lower private costs, and the most predictable job demand. So as I mentioned, we are in the process of developing our existing building electrification strategy. And so I would encourage you all, and on the next slide, I'm going to share our program website. But I would love it for folks to visit our webpage, and you can sign up for email alerts. But there's going to be an opportunity to sort of weigh in on what strategy policy pathways that you would hope to see in an existing building electrification strategy. So if people have questions, you can definitely contact me, and we encourage you to, sort of stay plugged in because there will be, I think, broad reaching workforce impacts of building electrification. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. And I'll just pause here for a second. I know that all questions may not be answerable, but if there are any questions from anyone in the audience for what you've heard so far, if you can either put that in the chat or raise your hand, we will do our best to answer. Just looking around to see if there are any hands raised. Oh, On, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. I was just really curious to find out a little bit more about the policy. Is there a preference of for each, I guess, region, area, or city that they're pursuing? So that way we can like kind of front load and kind of prepare ahead, like the types of technicians and so forth.
Thank you for the question, Laura. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I can't speak for other jurisdictions. I think, there's, it's interesting. There's a existing building electrification, I would say it sort of touches everyone differently. So there are, we have a lot of folks that are really excited about electrification and want the process to be as streamlined as possible and make it really, really easy. There are other people that really are not excited and don't necessarily want to be like forced into electrifying their home. And so we're really trying to strike a balance there, provide the support that people need in order to make this transition, and recognizing that it is a transition that's going to take time. Especially in older homes, there are, some bigger barriers, or it can feel more overwhelming to make that switch. So I would say, yeah, that's why we're looking for input. We really want to hear from folks about what they would like to see in the strategy as it develops. And I'd encourage you. And I think thinking about it from this workforce side is something that we haven't necessarily gotten a lot of input on yet. So I would love it if folks on this call would get plugged into our strategy development and really help us shape that. Because yeah, I think there's something really exciting about it having a little bit more predictable job demand, which would allow for, again, it's a long-term strategy. So there'd be time to get folks trained up, and that there would be a lot of great job opportunities in Sacramento region as we move forward. So.
Thank you, Laura. And Michael Corbett, you have a question as well?
Yeah. Thank you, Laura, for taking my question. Mike Corbett with Bradford White Corporation. We're a water heater manufacturer. A couple questions regarding your plan. Has the city looked into what incentives or what encouragement would be needed to stimulate the stocking of these types of products at wholesalers and retailers for that matter? And then additionally, what kind of investment in the electrical infrastructure or construction infrastructure for that matter would be needed for a lot of these products? Knowing specifically with heat pump water heaters, there's a lot involved from upgrading electrical panels and the significant cost there, coordination with SMUD in your case, and just obviously educating the trades on all the nuances that go into this product that is not necessarily an easy retrofittable product.
Yeah, I actually might kick part of your question at least over to Scott Blunk, who I think is on the line here from SMUD. Scott, do you want to weigh in on the sort of electric readiness of our grid, et cetera?
Yeah, and this is a question we get a lot. The grid is not ready for 2045, but it's ready for today, and it's ready for the next few years. Like, all systems are kind of a living system, and we certainly have been planning for 100% all electric by 2045 across our entire territory for years now, and that's where we're moving. I guess, on the retrofitability, yes, it can certainly be a struggle. There are some placements and just situations when products are being retrofitted that are harder than others. I mean, there are now 120 volt versions, a lower voltage, lower amperage draw, which will help, but that's not going to meet all the need either. So there will have to be some creativity in whatever ordinance comes out, or how, and not even beyond the ordinance, and just how we're going to get all the buildings when some are going to be very challenging. And so whatever's put in place will have to be very flexible and adaptable to kind of help make that happen.
Yeah, I think one thing I would just add is that we have a new building electrification ordinance, which is for all new construction. So not for, which is a right now sort of, it will be a mandate. So with some limited exceptions, there will be all new construction will need to be all electric. However, our existing building electrification strategy, we haven't, some of the processes will be, we haven't decided sort of what will be voluntary and what will be mandatory, and the sort of timeline of that. And that's part of this strategy development. And as Scott mentioned, I think it will have, there will be built-in flexibility for, recognizing that there are some building types and uses that are much harder to electrify than others. And then we're really doing a lot of community outreach. Right now, we've been, trying to get input from the community on a set of equity criteria, which is sort of a framework we're using for developing the strategy. We're then going to be looking for input on the strategy sort of policies themselves. And then we're going to do ongoing community outreach to, really try to provide support as people make this transition, because we recognize, again, that it's going to be, more challenging for certain buildings and certain people than others. And we need to, provide that flexibility and support as we move forward.
And I think one other point is, I think customers will want this more and more as we go along. Part of that reason is gas prices are high now. They're forecasted to go much higher, much higher in the coming years, just based on the economics of how natural gas in particular is being paid for. So I think there'll be people wanting to make the move quicker in the future, and as they understand the environmental impacts of their existing gas units.
Thank you, Scott and Laura, appreciate it. Laura, if I could ask you, there's a question in the chat from Cameron. If you might be able to answer it that way, then we can kind of move forward on the agenda. And I do want to encourage you to introduce yourselves in the chat so everyone here can know who else is on the call, and there might be some networking opportunities that arise out of this. That's not uncommon for these advisories for connections to be made. So if you could put your name and organization and contact information if you like, but at least your name and organization so everyone knows who's here, that would be helpful. And I'm going to introduce now Ebony Benzing, who's the research manager with the North Far North Center of Excellence. They are a great partner in these industry advisories and just a fantastic research partner overall. Ebony has been doing a great job of trying to get an impact on the specific occupations that are related to building electrification. And so I'll hand it over to you, Ebony.
Hey, thank you. Hi, I'm Ebony. Apologies in advance. I have a sleeping pooch under my desk, so if you hear snoring, it's coming from her. But thank you so much for having me here today. As Renee said, I am the research manager with the North Far North Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. And my presentation today is really focused on presenting the job demand and educational supply for some of these building electrification occupations in our region. Next slide, please. So first, a little bit about the Centers of Excellence. There are 9 centers across the state, and our collective mission is to support the development of career education programs in California's community colleges. Next slide, please. We typically do this by using labor market data, both traditional and real time, to answer questions like, what is the employment outlook for students? What skills and credentials are needed for students to access employment in the local labor market? And what programs look ripe for investment? Next slide, please. So we're going to start today by just kind of taking a look at how I decided which occupations to focus on in this presentation. In late 2019, the UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation released a report that estimated the potential employment impacts of building decarbonization policies across California. The center estimated that building electrification would impact several California sectors, including construction, manufacturing, and utilities. The chart here shows the estimated average change in employment by industry by year across California. The center estimates that the majority of the impact of electrification policies would be to jobs in construction. The construction sector consists of retrofits of residential and small commercial buildings. That's the medium blue column. And large commercial and MUSH, or municipal, university, school, and hospital retrofits. That's the turquoise bar on the chart. It also includes renewable energy construction, the yellow columns, and new construction. Those are the gray columns at the bottom of the slide. These are the industries where we'd expect to see primarily job growth due to electrification policies being implemented across the state. Now you'll notice that changes to jobs in the new construction sector are negative. That's the gray part at the bottom. The reason for this is that the center estimates that there will be a labor savings associated with not having gas pipes and associated metered connections being installed in buildings. Therefore, there's a projected small decrease in jobs of up to about 3,600 jobs statewide in the new construction industry. So since the majority of job impacts were associated with the construction sector, that's where I chose to focus my research. Next slide, please. So using both the Luskin Center's research and feedback from colleagues, we developed a list of occupations that could be associated with building electrification. And from there, I grouped the jobs into different categories based off of the role that the workers would perform when it comes to building electrification. Group 1 consists of our existing building retrofit workers. Those are our electricians, our plumbers and pipe fitters, and our HVAC technicians. These are the jobs where workers would be directly involved in the dismantling or installation of structures related to electrifying a building. Group 2 is, I'm calling it new building construction. It's really just to differentiate from that first group. It's kind of everybody else you think of related to new building construction. The list is not comprehensive, but these are some major jobs that are in our region. The third group focuses more on kind of the greening and weatherization jobs in our area. So these are workers who would perform some of those tasks that Laura mentioned earlier. So the energy efficiency upgrades, the energy audits, and installing solar panels and whatnot. I'm not focusing on this group of occupations in here, mostly because this is not a really comprehensive list, and it kind of takes us a little bit outside of the scope of building electrification as well. And then the last group would be our gas and electric infrastructure and utility kind of workers, because there's going to be impacts to those workers as well. Once again, I'm not focusing on that category today. Next slide, please. So now we're going to take a look at some traditional labor market data associated with that construction side of building electrification. This data comes from Lightcast, which is formerly known as MZ Burning Glass, and it covers the 7-county Greater Sacramento subregion across a 5-year projection period from 2020 to 2025. Next slide, please. So the building electrification, retrofit, and construction workforce in Sacramento is pretty sizable. There were nearly 52,000 jobs in 2020, and these jobs are projected to grow to almost 58,000 by 2025. The sector has a faster than average job growth rate at 11%, compared to 9% for all jobs in the Greater Sacramento area. And there's an average of almost 6,500 job openings each year over the next 5 years. Next slide, please. This chart shows the breakdown of jobs between that retrofit category and the new construction category that I established earlier. On whole, just kind of comparing these two, there are fewer retrofit jobs compared to construction. So about 14,000 retrofit jobs in 2020 versus 38,000 construction jobs in 2020. There's faster projected job growth among the retrofit jobs than the construction jobs. So that's 16% versus 10%. And then that last column, the yellow one, shows the total number of job openings between 2020 and 2025. So that's a 5-year period versus the single-year period I showed you on the earlier side. And surprisingly, job openings are concentrated among the construction workforce, and that makes a lot of sense due to the number of jobs there. Next slide, please. So what you have now is a table that shows detailed labor market data for each of the occupations that I'm talking about in both of these categories. There's a lot of information on this table, so I'm going to invite you, when you have the opportunity and when you have access to these slides, to come back and take a look at this. So for now, all I'm going to do is highlight the circled areas on this chart. Jobs within the retrofit group, that's the top part of the table, are heavily concentrated among electricians. Nearly 50% of those jobs are for electricians in our area. Electricians also have a very fast projected job growth rate over the next 5 years at 23%, and they have a large number of annual job openings, more than 1,000 each year for the next 5 years. I'd say that there's a high level of demand for electricians in our area. There's also significant demand for carpenters and construction laborers on the construction workforce side. That's the rows at the bottom of the table. Most of the jobs in the construction workforce are concentrated among the carpenters and construction laborers out of those 5 occupations. And while projected job growth for these 2 occupations is slow to average, there's a large number of annual job openings, 1,500 for carpenters, and then almost another 1,500 for construction laborers each year for the next 5 years. So there's also high demand for these jobs as well. Next slide, please. So the COE also considers wages of these occupations. Part of the mission of the community college career education programs is to prepare students for jobs that pay a living wage. So what the COE does is we compare earnings for these occupations to 2 living wage standards. And these are living wage standards for the Greater Sacramento region. There's a living wage for a single adult, and then there's a living wage for a family. And for us, we're considering family to be a single adult with 1 school-age child. So there's some variability depending on family size and whatnot. All of the occupations listed here pay entry-level wages that exceed the living wage for a single adult. And then all but one of the occupations pay median wages, that's the one right in the middle, that meet or exceed the hourly wage needed to sustain a small family. Next slide, please. For the third part of my presentation, we'll take a look at some job postings data just to get a sense of the types of employers that have been searching for workers in these occupations in the last 12 months or so. This data also comes from MZ. It's part of their job tools package, which aggregates online job postings from multiple websites. Next slide, please. So of the 417,000 job postings in the Greater Sacramento region between July 2021 and June 2022, about 7,000 of those were for the occupations that we're looking at today. 1,900 of those, about 1,900 of those were for our retrofit occupations. So remember, that's our HVAC workers, electricians, and then plumbers and pipe fitters. And then the other 5,200 were for our construction workers. The table on the right gives a detailed breakdown of how many job postings per occupation. So what I find interesting about this table is that the data is a little bit reversed from our traditional labor market data. For the retrofit workers, for instance, job postings were heavily concentrated among our HVAC technicians. Nearly half of the job postings that I found online were for HVAC workers. Remember earlier, the traditional LMI showed that most retrofit jobs were for electricians. So it's a little bit of a flip there. There's also kind of a similar flip happening with the construction job postings. So earlier with the traditional LMI, our top two occupations were carpenters and construction laborers. And the job postings, construction managers and construction laborers are rising to the top. I think that one of the reasons why this data looks very different from, or looks somewhat different from the traditional labor market data has to do with how jobs are counted in our traditional LMI. The traditional LMI, or labor market information, counts all jobs in an occupation. That includes unionized and non-unionized workers. Whereas the job postings data doesn't necessarily pull in those unionized job postings. So access to some work is really contained within a trade union organization. So what I'm analyzing here are the jobs that don't have those same constraints. As a result, this data may not fully reflect what's happening in our region when it comes to kind of employment within the construction sector, who's hiring, who's doing what jobs, and things like that. Next slide, please. So here we have a list of the top 10 employers for those retrofit occupations in the Greater Sacramento region. So retrofit, remember, HVAC, electricians, plumbers, and pipe fitters. This list is based on the number of unique job postings found online between July 2021 and June 2022. I've also included a column, the far right one, that shows the type of employer. It gives us a sense as to whether the job posting is coming from a staffing agency, a contractor, or some other type of business. The employers on this list are largely HVAC contractors and staffing companies. So it's no surprise why we have so many job postings for HVAC technicians and whatnot. An interesting find on this list is going to be kind of midway through Sears. We see Sears on there. It's a little bit of an outlier given that Sears department stores have largely closed, but there's quite a few Sears appliance and appliance outlets still in the region. And what they've been looking to hire are workers who handle appliance repairs, refrigeration repairs. And that's a job that's really closely tied with our HVAC technician occupation. Next slide, please. So similar slide, but this time, this one is focused on construction. Staffing companies are still popping up as the list as the employers with the most job postings, but there's also a number of construction firms that are focused on residential, commercial, and infrastructure building popping up on this list. Those firms include Meritage Homes, MDC Holdings, or AKA Richard American Homes, KDC Construction, and Mass Tech. In terms of the jobs that those kind of builders were looking for, it was pretty mixed across the construction occupations. There wasn't really anything that stood out to me when I was looking at the individual job postings to say, hey, there's a spike for this particular occupation. But there are also 3 engineering and construction management firms listed on the bottom of this table. These firms were primarily looking for construction managers, and that's an occupation that happened to have the most job postings over the last 12 months within the sector. Next slide, please. So for the last part of my presentation, we're going to take a look at some of the educational program supply. Next slide, please. Here we have a list of community college training programs that are focused on training towards the occupations that I've been presenting on in this presentation. The community colleges offer a wide variety of certificate and associate degree programs that could train and upskill workers for these high demand jobs in Sacramento. The community colleges offer trade apprenticeships, so carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and pipe fitting. And it's not only limited to those. They also offer building inspection, construction management, and HVAC programs. Also, Cosumnes, River, and Sierra offer a construction fundamentals or pre-apprenticeship construction program that could provide foundational training for entry-level construction jobs. I'm thinking that these could be programs that train towards or supply workers for those entry-level construction laborers type roles. Next slide, please. There's also a number of non-community college training programs that train towards these occupations, most notably among around electrical and then HVAC training. Some of the trainers are listed here. So National Career Education in Citrus Heights. There's independent training and apprenticeship program in the La Riviera / Rancho Cordova area and Intercoast College. HVAC, once again, NCE, UEI College, and Intercoast College. I also wanted to include on here a clickable image that is a list from the North State Building Industry Association. These are construction-related post-secondary programs, and it provides just a list of all of these programs that are available in our region. And it considers a lot more of the training programs that I haven't actually included in this presentation. So you'll be able to access that, that list by clicking on the image when you have the slides. Next slide, please. And lastly, I have a chart that is kind of getting to the crux of this. It's a comparison between job demand and educational supply. So the green bar represents our annual job openings for that 5-year projection period. The blue bar represents a 3-year average of community college awards from programs that are aligned to the occupation. And the green bar also represents the same thing, but it's focused on post-secondary, other post-secondary training providers. So those beyond the community college system. In each instance, with each of these occupations, you'll see that job demand is really outpacing our educational supply, and then the gaps are pretty wide. It shows us or indicates to us that there's a need for more skilled labor in our region. So last slide, please. So in closing, I just kind of want to reiterate 2 points. One, there's a high level of demand for workers in retrofit and construction jobs associated with building electrification. But I also want you to note that this is the level of demand without the impact of building electrification policies. We can assume that once those policies are in place, demand is most likely going to increase. Also, the gap between demand and educational supply is an opportunity to strengthen the pipeline for skilled workers in these jobs. We're at a point where we need to think and do differently to bring in the skilled labor that's needed. We also need to kind of attract those non-traditional workers into these areas. That's going to help strengthen the pipeline. So with all that said, here's my contact information. If you ever have questions about presentations, please feel free to email me. I'd also like to invite you to check out our website. The icon there is clickable and it takes you directly to the Greater Sacramento webpage of our website. And you can check out some of the reports that we do. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ebony. And we'd like to open it up for questions at this point. If anyone has a question, you can either place it in the chat or you can raise your hand. An's question is directed to somebody specific, not Ebony, so I'll leave it there for her to answer. Any questions on the labor market or occupational presentation?
I have a question. This is Ray Leon.
Okay.
You know, it seems like from the research, what is assessed is are the current industries that are in the area and the jobs that have continued to be there. But I'm wondering, you know, in areas where in reality the economy should be diversified, what approach should we take to try to kind of inform on how or with what we can diversify the economy so that it's not just like in my example, ag and based on water, that when there's a drought, it's all going down.
So you're asking, Ray, about diversifying the economy beyond construction and just across the economy overall?
Well, in my area, that's very much agricultural.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like when the ecosystem is not diverse, it's more in danger of going kaput. You know what I mean? So then what mechanisms are out there or what approaches exist with research institutions to try to delve into some of that to provide regions, sub-regions, or communities some tools or something to try to kind of think through and work out a plan to diversify the economy. I mean, I'm like developing my own plan as a mayor of my city, but also as a, you know, long-time organizer, economic, social, environmental, climate justice. But I mean, it would be great to find some tools, some support that could kind of help me get through it faster.
Thank you, Ray. I think if we have your contact information in the chat, we'll set up a separate meeting with you, the Valley Vision team, to try to answer those questions and come alongside you. Are there any?
Let's explore them together.
Okay, looking forward to it. Are there any questions specific to the labor market information or occupational information before we move on? Okay, well, Ebony, you always do a great job. So very impressive as usual. Next, I want to introduce to you our industry panel. Very thankful for the folks that have invested their time in preparing for this advisory and spending time with you today to answer your questions. We do have some prepared questions. And then after that, we'll give you some time to ask questions of your own. So I will start with introducing Scott Blunk, is the electrification strategist for SMUD, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, which means he's a strategic planner for energy efficiency and electrification. He is also an adjunct professor of building science at Cosumnes River College, a licensed general contractor, and a real estate broker in his spare time. Scott attained his BS in mechanical engineering at Purdue University and his MBA from Marquette University. We also have Rick Larkey with us, and he is the technical director with the North State Building Industry Foundation, as well as he is the board chair for the Golden Sierra Workforce Board, which serves the counties of Placer, El Dorado, and Alpine. We have Hillary Tellison, who is the workforce program manager for Grid Alternatives of the North Valley. She has 15 years of experience working with community members pursuing their future career goals in education and technical tracks. She manages the Clean Energy Career Pathways program in the North Valley region. And we have Rick Wiley from Velara Building Systems, who began his career with Butler when Velara was Butler in 1976 as a truck loader, working his way up to president in 1986. He is a CABEC certified energy analyst and Cheers certified energy rater. He holds multiple patents in HVAC products, including the Zone Thermal Equalizer and Smart Vent. He has sat as a BIA board member, BIA Trade Contractors Council chairperson, and BIA PAC member. He is the past president of the Board of Home Aid, past president of BIA Associates Council, and former VOA board member. I also know he functions with the Set of Sacramento Works Board as well. When not at work, he enjoys his family, his faith, golf, cycling, and is an avid reader. And we don't know if he sleeps at all ever, which sounds like maybe the case for our entire panel. So we're so thankful that you are here with us today. We have a couple of prepared questions, as I said, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So be thinking about any questions that you might want to ask. So for our panel, I want to start out by asking you to give a brief introduction of your organization or business, the main services that you provide, and the number of employees and types of positions that you hire for. And Scott, I will start with you.
Okay, I work for SMUD, the electricity provider for Sacramento County. We're a fully integrated utility, which means we do everything from generate the electricity, distribute it, bill it, market it, all aspects of that and everything associated with it. So the number of employees, there's a slightly over 2,200 employees, and we hire for every one of those positions. There's always movement up and down and over in the industry. So I know we do have many job openings right now.
Thank you, Scott. Next, I'll go to Rick Wiley. I'm going to be saying last names when I say Rick because we have two Ricks on the panel.
Thank you. That's always helpful. So Valara Building Systems, as indicated, formerly Butler Heating and Air, is an older name. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year. We predominantly do new construction, residential heating and air, plumbing. We do some solar and battery work. We have just under 1,300 employees and all kinds of hiring for installers,
oh, you're cutting out a little bit.
Office positions, engineering, estimating, and the like. So very, pardon? Can
you
hear
were
me?
Cutting out a little bit, but you're back. You're back. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Yeah, I've noticed somebody else cutting out a little. So we're very much in the home electrification business with our new home battery that is just rolling into the market, and also an integrated heat pump system for mostly residential replacement and new construction. So
thank you very much. And Rick Larkey, if you could provide us some information about your organization and the services you provide and your representation of employees and positions.
Okay. The North State Building Industry Foundation is an advocate and intermediary for primarily the residential construction industry, although we touch not only commercial but manufacturing and agriculture a bit. So you have a Venn diagram. We're kind of at the center of a lot of activities. We deal on a regular basis with over 550 employers in the region, promoting a variety of programs to them that allow them to be engaged in meeting their workforce needs, including apprenticeships, placement services, and connection to training providers. And then on the supply side, we work with a variety of social service organizations and educational programs to try to not only promote construction, but establish some kind of meaningful connection with those providers and the various training programs and placement opportunities there are in the region.
Thank you, Rick. And Hillary, if you could tell us a little bit about Grid Alternatives and the training programs that you work with and the community members you serve.
Yes, I can. Thank you, Renee. So I am representing kind of a different organization than the other representatives here. So Grid Alternatives is a nonprofit solar installer. Our mission is to build community centered solutions to advance economic and environmental justice through renewable energy. Whoa, that's a mouthful, but basically what we do is we install solar, and we have a solar job training program that's incorporated into our business model. That's the training program has developed as the industry has. And so every year our program has gotten more kind of concentrated and specific, and it's very much centered on building equity in a blooming industry.
Thank you, Hillary. The next question that we want to pose to the panel is related to job projections. You saw the labor market information that Ebony presented. If you have any comments related to that, please feel free to provide them, but also what is your company's perspective on the current need for workers and projections a year from now or even 5 years from now? So Scott, I'm going to start with you again on that question.
Yeah. So the company's perspective on current workforce needs and projections 5 years from now, I was trying to get our HR to give me a canned answer, and I couldn't get one, but I do know with what we have planned and with regards to building electrification, vehicle electrification, battery storage, virtual power plants, and getting all of the carbon out of our grid by 2030, we will continue to hire. Every day we'll be posting new jobs, and I don't think there's a push to grow our organization. We want to be able to do more with less, but I think that's the same with most organizations right now.
Thank you. And Rick Larkey, what are you hearing from the employers that the BIA works with in terms of expectations for jobs now, a year from now, or 5 years from now? What are your projections?
Yeah, well, near term, I think it's a definite maybe. The industry itself is slowing down a bit. There's a real question as to which direction it's going to go in. On the one hand, the demand is high, but on the other hand, given the situation with interest rates and, the continuing inflationary pressure due to supply pressure and labor needs and whatever, there's a real question about how we're going to be able to respond. Pushing through the near term on the other side, whether you talk about 3 to 5 years, it's going to be, demand's going to be strong and healthy. Our shortages are such that they're perpetual, and we have not been able to any significant degree to really fill the gap. So until that happens, till we experience that, we're going to have a consistent demand in the industry.
Thank you, Rick. And Rick Wiley, what are your thoughts on your projections for occupational demand for your business now, and what you're experiencing now and what you're planning to experience in the next 3 to 5 years?
So thank you. That question, as Rick indicated, there's a little bit of uncertainty in the residential new construction sector. But overall, annually, we're usually hiring in the neighborhood of 5 people a year. We kind of expect something like that to continue. Obviously, there's a turnover factor. Not everybody that we hire is a good fit for industry. And we do hire, we'll talk about this a little more later, but we hire entry-level people. But we expect to continue at about 500 a year. We have, while new construction residential may be softening a bit, we have a tremendous amount of growth going in apartment new construction. And we're about to very aggressively grow in the replacement sector, and especially in the electrification area. So we'll be transitioning some of our people through those different work areas based on how that demand sifts out. But we're looking for continued growth going forward.
Thank you, Rick. And Hillary, given your role, which is a little bit different than the rest of our panel, can you give us any insights, either comments from the labor market information that you saw, or anything you're seeing about demand for workers, or maybe even interest in the job training programs that you're seeing from the community level?
Oh, that's not, that's a good question. Yeah. So in anticipation of this question, I did pull up the 2021 solar job census that came out from IREC. And so in 2021, solar did see a 9% job growth rate. Since 2011, solar jobs have increased over double. So that's kind of been, it is an industry that's being, continuously looked at in terms of transitioning off of, finite resources for energy. So we're anticipating some growth. What we've done also in our training program is include, training around electrification so that our trainees are have more diversity in what they leave us with. And Renee, did you have another, I can't remember what your final question was there.
I just threw in a little bit about the demand you're seeing from community members, which
Oh.
you didn't prep for. So
Yes, thank you. No, that's a great question. We've had actually our training cohorts have been filling up because of COVID. Sometimes people start and then they've gotten sick and couldn't, finish, but we have definitely seen an increase in interest in our training because we have a low barrier program, meaning, we don't really have any qualifications other than someone, needs to be able to get there and lift 40 pounds for the training. There's a lot of kind of exposure and education that happens. It's interesting. As Rick was pointing out, Wiley from Velara, it's some people get there and they go through the whole program and they have a good time, but maybe it's not exactly for them, But we have been anticipating, if the growth continues to go as the way it has, and with the new infrastructure bill just passing, hopefully we'll see more, increase in the numbers of those jobs in the future.
Thank you. Rick, Wiley, you had mentioned the transitioning potentially of some of your workers from some jobs into other jobs, and that is interesting to us as well. And just overall, what specific skills or credentials are you looking for when you're hiring? And do you anticipate any changes to those desired qualifications as the market changes or policy measures go into place?
So there's a couple of answers to that question. First thing, we're always looking for skilled workers, as everybody else. But over the years, we've come to realize that we can't rely on the skilled labor force being available. So we have our own apprenticeship program. We have about 150 apprentices each year that are going through a 3-year program. So that's where we hire entry-level people, and we just need people that have physical interest and ability in the trades, and we give them an opportunity. So we'll continue the plan. We will, often we'll pick up some experience here and there, just as a normal job transitioning. But for the most part, our biggest recruiting area is entry level, and we'll train them.
Thank you, Rick.
One thing that will be a different skill as we move into the replacement. One, electrical, along with the plumbers in a replacement. And secondly, it's a more customer-facing and customer-friendly, customer-positive experience requirement. So a little bit more customer social skills that we're going to be needing in that replacement sector.
Thank you, Rick. And you did cut out a little bit, so I just want to make sure we heard you that some additional skills needed will be electrical and customer-facing, customer service skills. You like to see more of that?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then Scott, if I can ask you the same question, what specific skills or credentials is SMUD looking for when hiring, and are you anticipating any changes to those due to the market or policy implications?
Yeah, so we're looking for for all skills. I mean, certainly building electrification, EV, battery storage, those are important skills to have, but also line workers and office staff. But what I see in my role around building electrification is the need really outside of SMUD in helping contractors become comfortable and familiar and bringing more on that are with using heat pumps. As I've said in the chat, like this electrification strategies that we have now at SMUD, it's not about taking out perfectly good equipment. This is upon failure, the equipment has to be replaced anyway, whether it's gas or electric. So we don't see a huge incremental additional labor needed because you're replacing gas with electric, although those skills needed will be slightly different, as kind of Rick alluded to. And more people familiar with heat pumps, more electricians maybe, and that's really where we see the need in the labor market.
Thank you, Scott. And since you referenced Rick Larkey, we'll ask Rick next. Any specific skills or credentials that your employers are looking for?
Well, certifications and license requirements really are dictated by governments, and the industry certainly has standards, and they have some recognized standards, spend a lot of time developing those standards, but oftentimes those are voluntary unless they're involved in some kind of an apprenticeship program. So the real question is, especially around the areas of weatherization, are there going to be kind of a reimposition of some of the standards that existed the last time we did this? And one of that has to do with HERS raters. I mean, are you going to require HERS raters to do the assessment of what kind of weatherization stuff needs to happen? And in terms of the installers, there's a whole set of BPI standards that are around that. So the real question, and the city drives this along with SMUD, is what kind of standards are you going to require of your workforce to be able to make the modifications in order to qualify for whatever subsidies that are going to exist? The other, in terms of the issue of the heat pumps, I would think as that gets introduced, the curriculum modifications and whatnot to existing curriculums will just incorporate that into the existing training programs. I don't, in one sense, I don't see that as a problem. It's definitely a need, and something we need to get the word out and starting on that kind of stuff. But that's something I feel, the existing training programs will be able to accommodate that pretty well in terms of their existing programs. So.
Thank you, Rick. Hillary, maybe I'm going to combine this with our next question as well. So, what specific skills or credentials maybe is your organization preparing folks for? And if you are anticipating any changes with that. Our next question is also about any tests or tools to assess minimum or desired skill level for applicants. So you kind of mentioned that the threshold for entry is low for your training program. So I think you may have lined that out for us, but also giving us specifically, like, what does it take to get in the door?
Right. It's filling out an application. We ask if people are afraid of getting on roofs, details like that. But even students who have had a fear of heights have completed our program successfully. So, but similarly to what Rick Larkey was just describing, like our regional office has done work interviewing, different employers, especially as we're moving into EV wiring, just kind of basic concepts of what someone would need to know for EV installation. So we've tried to figure out how we can be a really good conduit for introducing those concepts that people are going to need to know to be competitive in the industry, and then also understand and be aware of partnering agencies like EBEW and how to get our trainees in the room with them so that they can get awareness over the application process. Because I feel like GRID, with the work that we're doing and the focus that we have, we're really trying to create avenues of access. So sometimes even just filling out a job application can be intimidating. And so if there is a complex application process or tests, it's not as simple, sometimes you need a support network, that's helping you navigate how to get in touch with the right people and how to apply with even the basic skills, because sometimes you could feel like you don't even have what it takes to apply, so I think that that's how we kind of positioned ourselves as a place for people to kind of come and familiarize themselves with the industry and connect them with as many people as we ourselves can get connected to as an organization.
Thank you for that. I'm actually going to go a little off booked here and ask Luis Sanchez if there's any information that you want to provide about community resource projects. I see you're on the call as well, and I know you also do some access programs for community members into climate related jobs. So I can give you a minute to discuss that if you like.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting to hear the conversation. Definitely, we see a need for trained people in weatherization. We do a lot of energy efficiency installations in low-income residential units, both single family and multifamily. We are beginning to move into the electrification field of that. The contracts that we have through LIHEAP and DOE require certain certifications, which our employees have to be able to do that work. But it's the measures for heat pumps is not accepted yet. I think maybe in this next grant year, DOE will allow for fuel change outs. So we're training our folks into that aspect and working with SMUD. I think that's going to help us accomplish that. The other aspect, and we've worked with GRID in the past with part of the solar installation. That's obviously another area of need that we see that we can provide some training. We are a building industry performance test center for those that are seeking certifications for doing assessments, doing DOE work in the community. We're ramping that up because there's a great need for people to kind of learn those basic skills and certifications, be able to assess the work that's necessary. I see that, and all this is happening very quickly because of the funding through the infrastructure bill, through the Inflation Reduction Act that hopefully will get passed tomorrow by Congress, and then some additional dollars that have been released by DOE and other agencies, that there's going to be an increase potential need and opportunities for people. We're trying to bring people from having no experience, no knowledge of this space of work, to at least give them the opportunity to explore these areas. And hopefully some will continue to learn and then move into not only with opportunities that we may have, but the opportunities that the private industry is looking to deliver and provide. So I think we're all kind of working in the same direction. I think there's opportunities to collaborate even better. And thank you for bringing this session together, because I think we can all work and be successful in helping our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And really what that is part of what these sessions are about, is to really align the different pieces of the pipeline. So when we have community-based organizations that are helping, like Ebony said, to diversify or pull additional folks into the pipeline, maybe provide those basic or foundational skills, then, you know, a community college can pick up the baton and move it further down, and also get them to industry with the skills that they need. So that's part of the intent of these advisories. So going back to our panel, you know, Scott, I want to ask you, are there any tests, tools, or that you use to assess minimum qualifications or desired skill levels for applicants? Is there any testing or minimum qualifications that SMUD uses that would be good for this stakeholder group to know about when preparing employees for employment?
For employment at SMUD, we have such a diversity of jobs that are available. So everyone has a unique set of qualifications or skills or tests or certifications that may need to be required. And I can't, so I just can't go into all of that. But I think Rick Larkey kind of talked about it as well, where there are certain certifications around electrification that may be coming, maybe it's heat pump specific, or maybe electrification specific trainings that may be coming that will be important for the kind of, as we bring the broader workforce along on this electrification journey.
Thank you. Rick Wiley, do you have any tests or tools or minimum qualifications that you're screening for the majority of positions at your organization?
So basically, again, there's an initial level of physical ability and interest in our trades when we're hiring entry level. As Hillary indicated, that we have a relatively low bar. We're really trying to engage with lots of young people. But we have testing to qualify for our apprenticeship. We have just invested a tremendous amount of funds and staffing towards recruiting, training, and we have a new group of career coaches that works with our employees. And with them, we'll have preview testing to really get a real good understanding of their true interests and abilities and skills, and help them find the career path that really hopefully lasts for a career. So that's kind of our strategy, is just start with a clean slate and work very hard to find the right positions for them.
Thank you. So Rick Larkey, with the employers that you represent, are you seeing much testing going on beyond just the physical capacity that's been mentioned here? You know, sometimes folks are not eligible for training programs or employment based on a math skill level or English language skills or things like that. So just looking for any qualifiers for positions.
Yeah, similar to what Scott said, I mean, we're talking about 80 different occupations. The diversity of entry level requirements is, you know, all over the board. The industry has developed a variety of pre-apprenticeship curriculum that kind of touches on all of these issues, and in the hopes of not only better preparing people, but so that they can make a better informed choice as to a particular direction or trade. And whether it's the multi-core craft curriculum, MC3, or the PAC curriculum, or Sierra College, and we have kind of a boot camp, a modified pre-apprenticeship. There's a variety in CRC as well. There's a variety of entry-level experiences that people will take to get a feel for that. And that kind of helps everybody, because when you talk about qualifications, especially with employers, to a high degree, this is relationships, the relationships that the training organizations have with the employers, the degree the employers know who's doing what and trust graduates from those programs. So it's a matter then of communicating what you have in the way of people, and so that they get picked up.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks for highlighting the trust relationship. I think you're exactly right about that. Rick Wiley, I'm going to ask you a question that wasn't prepared. Does Valara value MC3 training when they see that on applications coming in the multi-craft core curriculum, or it's not as, doesn't really matter as much as high value? Just curious.
So we don't see a lot of people coming with that. Certainly, if we have candidates that have like refrigerant qualification certification, that's very helpful. We again, somebody with electrical, either if they are an apprentice or they're a journeyman, you know, those positions are very, very high value, and we can onboard them at a much higher level and skill or pay and everything. But again, we just we work with lots of different agencies, but the agency's capacity is well below the industry needs.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you then, how are you currently advertising or locating job candidates? Are you partnering with different organizations, or what, you know, how is that going for you? And are you getting a diverse pool of candidates, do you think?
So yes, again, we have a very talented recruiting group. They do partner with agencies like the Building Industry Association Foundation, Sacramento Employment Training Agency, and then all of the online.
This meeting is being recorded.
Lots of different agencies that we partner with. Referrals is a huge source for us. Our employees refer about half of the people we hire. So that's a great source. We have a New Start program that we just started about a year ago that works with out-of-school youth, difficult to engage employees, a number of return to work from prison experiences. And we've got a special coach that works with them, and that's working very well for us. So the community colleges, we've got a great internship program that BIA and Lennar promotes with high school, and that's been a really good thing for, I think, the last 5 or 6 years. So lots of great connections with high schools, community colleges, and the like.
Do you want to talk about your relationship with Elk Grove Unified and that class you're doing with them?
You could probably tell that better than I can, Rick. But yeah, we through BIF, Elk Grove is a school district that we work closely with. But you know, Mary Bernard's doing some magic.
Well, one of the things, you know, Laura is our star employer in terms of how their innovation and approach to recruiting and developing relationships. And one of the real special, unique things is they're working with the district and some of the classes, and people who graduate from the training of those classes have if they so choose, have an opportunity to be seriously considered by Valora when they graduate. So those are the kinds of things that we, you know, really relish and really promote to the employers about how they might be better, in a better position to resolve and solve their workforce needs.
Thank you, both Ricks, and it sounds like, Rick Larkey, that North State BIF is a conduit for that, for helping solve some of those talent pipeline issues.
Yeah, we're here to help everybody.
Okay, great. And Scott, with SMUD, how do you locate job candidates? I think you have a testing process, is that right? Or what is your process for locating? I know you do internships as well, some pretty broad reaching internships across different levels. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we do internships. Our CEO currently used to be an intern, I don't know, 45 years ago or something. And my boss was an intern. He's quite younger than me, but he started as an intern, been there 20 years. So certainly there's internships. There's the principal place where every single job is posted is on the SMUD recruiting website. If you just go to smud.org, there will be a link on the main landing page. It is a great company to work for. Highly recommend it. I've been here 5 years. Great people. And then, you know, a lot of times on LinkedIn, that's where I heard about the job that I got at SMUD. Certain individuals in the company, like certain supervisors, will post jobs in their own networks, but primarily that's going to be on LinkedIn, mainly because we're looking for very specific skill sets. If the skill sets are more broad, it's always going to go through the SMUD external recruiting site though first.
Thank you. And I do know Susan Wheeler from your workforce department is just about everywhere doing outreach for SMUD. So that's probably also a helpful recruiting mechanism for you. And Hillary, if you could provide us some, you know, you're recruiting from the community into your program. So can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, we definitely recruit. We rely, you know, on our relationships with our community partners that have, you know, a lot more services that kind of get them connected with the community. So we've, you know, one of our first job training partners in Sacramento was Job Corps. We've worked closely with NCCT, SRCC, California Conservation Corps. And so those partnerships have really helped us engage with populations that, you know, are kind of beginning to professionalize, and they're kind of curious about the world and what they're going to do next. And they're all organizations that serve, you know, traditionally low economic neighborhoods and families. So, you know, it's been really helpful for us, though, that kind of connectivity. And then because, you know, you can knock on a billion doors and be like, hi, we're GRID, but if you don't have someone who's there helping you understand like this about the opportunity, you know, it always seems like a risk. So those community partners, making friends or advocates with another community organization, having someone else there who's interested in the work you're doing, that's really helped us engage with new community members and get great recruits for our training program.
Thank you. Rick Lark, you had something to add?
Yeah, you know, as Hillary was talking, I was reminded about the fact that we haven't really talked about some of the external barriers to employment, like transportation and a stable home environment that enables somebody to go to work every day and whatnot. And when it especially comes to a lot of those low income or high risk populations, that's one of the real big issues. And transportation is something that is, I mean, I don't know, what can I say? 85% of the trade jobs are going to require that you have transportation, and it's one of the biggest barriers to this. There's some social stuff, like trying to convince people that even though marijuana is legal, you shouldn't smoke it, switch to alcohol or something else. That stuff stays in your system and, you know, really creates this liability concern. So that's a big, huge issue when you talk about people being able to be considered and, you know, be successful on the job, is those external elements in their lives.
Thank you. And our last question that we have prepared is just asking about your experience partnering with community colleges. It did sound like that maybe that is a positive that's already happening on a lot of levels, but I'll just check in real quick. Rick Wiley, do you have experience partnering with the community colleges?
Yeah, you know, Los Rios and Sierra College have both been very great. And again, a lot of my experience that I'm sharing with you kind of connects with Rick Larkey, North State BIA Foundation, the program. I am on their board now. So we work together, and the connections there have been very beneficial. Again, the real overview is every year we've got about 50 interns that are high school students that come out onto the job site and work with the tools and get an exposure that is an amazing experience. That's what Rick was referring to there. Elk Grove High School is a big part of that. Roseville High School. We've got a number of high schools that participate. And then there's a job hiring fair that all the trades come together on a specific day, and we get to, try to hire those people, and they get to, it's a wonderful experience for them. They get a bunch of employers vying for their service in their company. So it's a lot of fun for everybody. But it also is just a great thing. One of our big goals is that it's portraying the career of that trades offer to our high school students, their parents that wonder, what should my kids do? We're really promoting the fact that there's some really good long-term career opportunities. So it's been a rewarding experience.
Thank you. And Scott, your experience partnering with the community colleges or SMEDs?
Yeah, I want to get my personal experience partnering with community colleges is that I'm an adjunct professor, or I was an adjunct professor anyway, at CRC. And what I've found, the students there, most of my students are not like coming out of high school. Most of them were career changers. Maybe going into building inspection technology is one class that I taught, and that were in the trades and kind of transferring, and others during the 2009, 2010, where people were just changing job types. Seen a lot of really great people come out of the community college system, like roofers whose knees were bad and wanted a job where they could stand up all day. Whether that was inspections or another gentleman, he became an energy auditor. The people that I've taught in the community college system, they just come in with a lot of really great life skills that can be kind of tuned up into the new economy and get them re-employed. And they've been really some really great workers have come out of that. And many of my students I've kept in touch with. One's my best friend now. He used to be my student. But like they've totally transformed their careers into something that better fits them today, and are very happy in those jobs. So that's been very rewarding. And maybe Ryan Conway can talk a little more about that, or how SMUD specifically recruits out of the community college, because I don't really know that angle very well.
Sure, Ryan, if you have more to add, that's welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and Scott, his contributions and his instruction were specifically in two programs that actually drew that population of transitioning adults. So they were our building inspection and energy, actually building performance and energy assessment program. So this was right in the 2009, 2010, where the construction industry was kind of going down. There was a lot of people being displaced, and so there was this extra large number of skilled people, and they saw the opportunities to retrain in an industry that was going to be coming up. And so I was very proud about our college being able to be poised to offer that kind of training almost in front of the need. Community colleges can be slow to pivot and see industry needs, but that one had a lot of smart people like the folks here in this meeting. They had their antennas up and they saw it coming, and they helped us get ready for that. And then also in our, a lot of those students were coming from the trades or something else. The other thing I'll say is that we do have a building inspection program. I'll try to keep this brief. I have a window for this a little bit later, but our building inspection program is also a program with an average age probably closer to mid-30s. They're not young folks coming right out of high school specifically, and a lot of them are also have some industry experience. So I think while I think Scott's delivery kind of made community college students look real advanced and coming with a lot of life skills, we also serve the population that is a lot like what Grid Alternative serves. Kids coming with very little experience, first generation students without perceptions of how to even get in. And so we actually cater to both. So Scott's portrayal was absolutely accurate for the two classes he taught for us, but we do actually have similar struggles entry-level workers and getting them to kind of buy into the culture, so that the value of the training they get while they're with us help help them be ready to succeed with outfits like Velara and the other professional contractors in town. So with that, I just wanted to clarify, but we do still work with SMUD. We participate in a lot of SMUD sanctioned activities to engage educators, and but we don't necessarily see a lot of our students go directly into SMUD, but we see them go in to work with a lot of like participating contractors with SMUD programs is a better way. That's kind of more my background as the construction guy. So thank you for the opportunity to explain.
Thank you, Ryan. And I know you're going to give us a little information about your programs here in a few minutes. Hillary, with Grid Alternatives, have you been partnering with the community colleges on, extended pipeline for community members that are being trained by your organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of gone both ways, where we've also partnered with, offering kind of some hands-on experience to like MESA students. Butte College has been one of our partners. Sierra College we've partnered with, and ARC. Our instructor, our technical academy manager, he teaches at Cosumnes River College too. So, we're very kind of connected in, where we will encourage people towards pursuing, advanced degrees if that's what they're looking towards doing as an option, if they are not interested in going directly into an entry-level solar installer position. But also we've used it as a recruiting partner, finding people who are interested in, in learning solar installation skills in a hands-on way. Yeah. I've got to also do a shout out to SMUD as well, because they're funding our clean energy career pathways. They're one of our major funders. And so that's also given us a lot of exposure to like new community partners that have helped us with our recruitment, which was like 2 questions ago. So I wanted to throw that out there too.
Thank you. And it's great to see the synergy between the different organizations, community-based, community college, organizations and companies that are hiring, support organizations like North State BIF. I like just that broad stakeholder coalition. That's really what it takes to, like Ebony had said earlier, expand and address pipeline issues. Rick Larkey, is there anything you want to add additional about partnering with community colleges? I know I see you in a lot of conversations where we are doing alignment, so I know you are working in that way.
No, in terms of the most recent opportunity that I see on the horizon that the community colleges are deploying is a very robust makerspace opportunity, which has a lot of different equipment and a lot of an emphasis to invite entrepreneurship. So we're trying to work with them right now, and I'm especially working with CRC and Sac City on this to see how we can take advantage of that makerspace experience to really link it to some of the other training programs. And we need to get a little farther down the road from COVID so that we can free up the opportunity for people who are not necessarily students to experience these things so that they can become students or find a training program that works for them.
Thank you, Rick. And so at this point, I wanted to open it up for questions from the audience. I know Jennifer Levitt, you had a question at one time that you posted in the chat, and I think you got some participation with it. Has your question been answered, or would you like to pose it to the broader panel?
Yeah, thank you, Renee. I think, just my question is in thinking about the existing housing stock in California versus new builds, and California's record on that front as being less than $1 million per year in recent years. How we're thinking about funding streams to support all of the retrofitting work that we know that we'll need to do. And Scott, I appreciate your point about low interest loan products that maybe some utilities are putting together, but and just thinking about the time and the scale that we need to operate to meet some of these climate goals. Just curious about how we're thinking about funding all of that work and how we're positioning the pipeline to meet that work that we're hoping is going to increase.
And can I start this off, because I kind of answered
go for it, Scott,
in the chat. So yeah, the cost to transition every home to all electric is ginormous, right? It probably starts with a T. But really what we have to focus on is we're trying to do this at time of failure or slightly before, right? So the cost of the new, there's a sunk cost anyway. Your HVAC has stopped working. You're going to need to spend, I don't know, let's say $15,000 anyway to put a new gas system in. So at that point, we want to instead put an electric system in. That may cost a little more, a few $1,000s more or so. And that's really the role of SMUD incentives, is to pay that incremental cost so that hopefully in the end, they get a better system, a safer system, a less polluting system at no more than the cost of the gas. So how are we going to finance it question is really about how are we going to finance it anyway, because every HVAC fails anyway at some point. So we're trying to keep the incremental cost low to zero, or even in the customer's interest. But we're also really hoping to be rolling out a 0% interest loan program that's for everyone in our territory, but it's really geared toward the people who are in a situation where they cannot get a loan. So this would expand the criteria to essentially everyone who that we can identify as being who they truly say they are. And that program would scale with need. So it's really trying to serve a niche where people who maybe their HVAC broke and they don't have the money, no matter what, we can get them a loan. That's the hope and that we're moving toward. And that should be out soon.
Thank you. Fantastic. Anyone else from our panel want to pitch into that question? Okay, I'm going to move on and on. You had also posed a question in the chat. Did you get a response to your question, or would you like to ask it to the broader group? You may have stepped away. Okay, we will move forward then. Oh, there you are. Did you want to ask your question to the broader group, or did you get your answer?
I did. I got my answer because then I had some private messages that from folks. I will be reaching out to you guys. This is actually a really good, great opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Then we are going to move on. I want to introduce to you, well, you've already met Ryan Connolly, Construction Technology Department Chair at Consumnes River College. We also have on this call, and who was part of the planning team for this advisory, Louis Garcia, Building Industries Department Chair at Sierra College. And they are going to tell you a little bit about the programs that they offer. I believe Louis is starting us out here, and we have, we'll start with you, Louis.
Thank you. So at Sierra College, as you saw in Ebony's slide, we have a construction management program, as well as a couple other classes that are not certificate-wise, but they are introductions. For example, in the fall semester, we generally have an electrical class that teaches a very wide scope. It's not meant to be an apprenticeship or anything like that. It is a very high level of electrical systems. And then in the spring, we have a plumbing and mechanical class that does the same thing. If you were to try to join one of these trades as an apprentice, each one of them is about 4 to 5 years, depending on workload. One of our major pushes for the last few years has been a construction fundamentals boot camp, which you've heard a couple times with Rick Larkey. We've actually, Valera is another partner that we have worked with quite a bit. They are always good to give us a presentation and allow the students to have hands-on abilities. The boot camp is basically 6 weeks long, and in that boot camp, we introduce them to the trades associated with residential construction, concrete, framing, electrical, plumbing, and some of the other outliers with it as well, just to kind of show when you talk about construction, you're not only talking about hands-on working in the field, you're also talking with the associated careers with it. Can you go into an office? Can you do project management? Can you do all these other careers associated with it? The beauty of the boot camp is it's only 6 weeks long, and it is 3 days a week. It is intended to mirror a job so that people get used to that, and they're outside too. That's the beauty of it. No, there's no air conditioning around here, and so you get a real hands-on feel for what the trade is. And we've had good success thanks to the BIA Foundation in placing anyone that wants to get a job is basically working. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but some have gone back and said, you know what? I liked seeing the welding program. I like seeing these other. So in the class, we introduce them to other things. My job is basically exposure. This is what is out there. How can I help you make a connection? And luckily, we have some great industry partners that make that connection easy. And it's the best thing about this entire sales pitch is it's tuition free. Basically, you show up, and that's it. We have the tools, we loaner tools, power hand tools, power tools, PPE, and we just actually this last year had a grant to run the MC3 training, and we ran 2 classes through there, and turned out, I believe, 25 students that are geared towards apprenticeship. And we have we're growing, and we'd like to do more. And electrification, that sounds like a good way of getting, or a goal for getting people some basic skills to get into these jobs. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you, Louis. And we're going to hear from Ryan now. We're also going to show a slide that indicates what programs are available in the colleges in the North region. So you can see that also, that what Louis was referencing. And then Ryan, if you can tell us about your programs as well.
Excellent. Like Louis was pointing out, a lot of our campuses have, everyone teaches, a lot of these colleges have general education, but then various campuses might specialize with specific CTE programs. And so like Louis said, with construction management, his plumbing and electrical courses under construction, and his boot camp, also welding at CRC at Casunas River College. As a chair, I get to kind of be intimately involved with all of these programs. But my full-time daily job is I'm the lead faculty in the construction program. But I think it's appropriate to start out that one of our sources of pride is that we do have a lot of the avenues in the building, in the construction industry can be explored at CRC. We have a great architecture program that's really a 2-year transfer style program that they do have a associate's degree, but the vast majority of students, like 22 out of 24 students, successfully transfer to our 4-year schools for architecture. They've always been very sustainably minded in design, and as we kind of move toward electrification, decarbonization, all these kind of topics are embedded in the way those design classes are taught. Energy efficiency, indoor air quality, Cal Green. I remember a couple of years ago, the instructor said, I hope we don't call this green building in 10 years. Hopefully it's just the way we do things. I think California's been really good about, putting voluntary programs in place that then take hold and become standardized code. But those students are, introduced to design, already, basically entrenched in sustainability. One of the things we do is, one of my favorite collaborations is that we also are building tiny houses. So the architecture students are designing them. We go through, pre-construction conversations. The construction students mingle with the architecture students. We talk about constructability. So it kind of introduces the construction students to the world of the design. And then once we start the design, once we start the build, then the architecture students are encouraged to come out and pound some nails, pull some wire, drill some holes, put on some windows. So that it gives them exposure. But the construction program itself is a series of 6 courses that we put together in a certificate that usually takes, if you come full time, they're 8-week-long classes that come 2 days a week, kind of all day, every day, and our guys are outside in the heat or the rain. But essentially, it's kind of designed to get students in and out in as little as a semester and a half. We do offer degrees in construction, but very few students go that route. Mostly students who already have general ed or even, other degrees can apply it. But we're kind of a workforce development program to try to get them in and get them out. We regularly stay in touch with guys like Rick Larkey, as well as Rick Wiley, whose industry input guides our curriculum. We try to stay current. If we stood in our little ivory towers, we wouldn't be knowing about electrification coming, right? So we try to stay involved and stay in front of this stuff. Our construction students, like I said, they are oftentimes with us full time for about 6 months. We work heavily with them to find them jobs. There are way more jobs than there are students across the board. So, we help them be ready to hit the ground running. We also have a building inspection program. Actually, Scott alluded to a class where some of our students, a building inspection program was traditionally in the evening, so that working folks could still come and get trained up to be ready to pass their national exams to be building inspectors. After COVID, that we were all forced to learn how to teach online the best we could. A lot of the instructors, specifically in building inspection, as well as our construction management technology, both of those topics are a little bit easier to transition to continuing to stay online. It increases accessibility to more people. And those both are very geared toward professional training. And a lot of it can be accomplished through online. And then welding, we do have a great welding program. Just Sierra's got a great welding program. American River's got a great welding program. Two things that aren't on here, the architectural design technology, which is a kind of a sister program with architecture. Essentially, we have what you might have called, 15 years ago, you might have called it like a drafting program that moved into AutoCAD, and now it's we refer to it as building information modeling, but they're using three-dimensional like Revit and software like that. And not all architecture students are in that, and not all architectural design students are in architecture, but there's a very distinct connection between those two programs. And last but not least, I know I got to wrap it up. Rick mentioned the trend toward maker spaces at the colleges. And so Sac City is by far, I think, in the forefront, at least in Los Rios. I don't want to marginalize what Sierra's got a very, very strong makerspace. Among Los Rios colleges that I'm a little more familiar with, Sac City has been great about creating curriculum, so it's not just a place where you can go have a hobby. You can actually go get 4 units and certificates in this advanced manufacturing stuff. We now have makerspace classes, and that's actually falling under my department area. So maker is now lumped in with construction and architecture at our school. So that's a new up and coming thing. Thank you for listening to my long-winded spiel.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Ryan. I think that's part of why these things need to happen, is because things change and we need to know what programs are offered in different schools for the collaboration that can exist. So thank you for highlighting all of that. And I think that is pretty much all we have for you today. We want to thank you for joining us. If you need assistance with alignment or connection with anybody who was on this call, please feel free to reach out to any one of us on the Valley Vision team. Also, Dr. Gill, who introduced herself earlier, again, is the new Assistant Director of Employer Partnerships for Energy, Construction, and Utilities. She did provide her contact information in the chat. She's your contact for the community colleges overall in the North region and can be of service to you. And we just really appreciate your time. Building electrification is coming at us like a tsunami, and we're all trying to get our arms around it as best we can to prepare all community members to have access to these future focused jobs. So your attendance and part of the conversation and time in the chat and what you shared with us today was really informative. We will be sending out all of the assets. You'll get the recording as well as the presentation with all the labor market information, all of that on there. And then again, if you need any assistance with connections, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. That's what we love to do. And we thank you for all you're doing in this space. And we hope you have a great afternoon and evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it a whole lot.
Thanks, son. Do you want to stop the recording?